Well, hello there. It's good to see you. This is Janine Sews. Thanks so much for joining me. This is the requisite first of the year sewing review and sewing plans video. Not going to be much of a review. It's mostly going to be plans. What I'm going to do and what you might like to join me in sewing in 2025. In the past couple of years, I've done a pretty good job of setting sewing goals and following through on them. I had very specific goals, garments, fabric, styles, different projects I wanted to work on. 2024, I made a lot of stuff. There are at least 43 projects that were completed. They weren't all closed for me. But honestly, this is too much. I don't want to sew this much this year. Part of the problem is I'm one of those people who, when I make a commitment to something, I follow through on it. So I committed to sewing a lot of different things last year, to doing different challenges, personal things I just decided I had to do. Now, it's really good to be someone who follows through on commitments. But there were things that I sewed when maybe I started on it and I wasn't super excited about it, but I said I was going to sew it. So I was going to sew it. I don't think it was a mistake to sew everything that I sewed in 2024. But this year, I'm going to take a little bit different approach. I'm going to be a little bit kinder and more gentle year in terms of goals. Before we jump into the 2025 plans, I'm wearing ready to wear today. I just felt like wearing this color. So I've been thinking about what I want to sew, why I am sewing things, what I need in my closet, and I just decided that this year I am not setting concrete, specific goals. I'm not going to say I'm sewing 86 t-shirts, or I'm going to master anything this year. My goal is to sew fabric I love and have no pressure or major commitments. I've said it many times, I have a tendency to jump into challenges, join them, and then afterwards wind up with something that maybe I really like, but there might have been something that I would have rather sewn. I don't regret any of the challenges that I've participated in, but this year I'm just thinking, no promises, that I will likely do far fewer very specific challenges. I've got some fabric that I want to sew. I'm not going to promise that I sew that fabric this year. I've got some patterns I would like to try. I'm not going to promise I'm going to try those patterns either. I just want to sew what I want to sew when I want to sew it. I know. Is that kind of like a crazy concept? However, I do have some things that I want to work on this year. It's not just going to be a free-for-all where I sew 86 t-shirts. When I was tidying up my sewing room a couple of weeks ago, I looked through all of the sewing magazines that I've collected over the past several years. I had subscription to Threads for maybe 3 or 4 years, and I had a subscription to Sew News for a couple of years and to the Creative Embroidery. I don't have a ton of magazines. I've got, I don't know, about that many magazines. But when I was tidying up and looking at all those magazines, I realized that there were quite a few of them that I had not even opened. I just kind of maybe flipped through them for a second. And when I was tidying up and I started looking through them, I realized that there were some really helpful articles in several of those magazines. Some editions of Threads had 5 or 6 things that I would love to not just read more closely, but also actually try the techniques that they teach you or describe in those articles. So, pulled out all the Threads magazines and I've gone through and I've marked each of them up with different either projects or techniques that I want to focus on or try this year, next year. I thought that those would be good little projects for those times when we want to sew something. You know that feeling? You want to sew something, but maybe you don't need to make a new garment. Instead, it might be nice to just take time to sit and learn how to do a technique or a different way to do something, or get a better understanding of how something should work in sewing. One of the articles that I found was all about turn of the cloth. I kind of know a little bit about turn of the cloth, but I think there's a lot more to it than has been stored in my little brain. So there are all kinds of really interesting articles that I'm going to read and techniques that I will try. Maybe not all this year, but that's something that I'll do when I just feel like being in the sewing room and I don't necessarily have something that I really want to sew at that moment. I also have a few sewing books. I don't collect sewing books. I've got Nancy Siemens pattern fitting, which I do use fairly often, but I've really only used it for the full bust adjustment. I've got Sarah Veblen's book, Perfect Fitting, that I have thumbed through, but it looked a little too complex. And I have the Thread Sewing Guide, which has some really nice techniques in it. So again, instead of just sewing garments, I will work on some skills this year. That's the plan. There will certainly be some clothes sewn. And what I thought would be fun for us to do this upcoming year is, if we see things that we love that either other people are wearing, post it on Instagram, a celebrity wore it, try to figure out how to sew the look. I don't want to do a sew the look challenge, but if I see something interesting, try to find a pattern that would work, fabric that would work, not duplicating something. It could even be the spirit of a garment. That might be something that we can do. If you see things and you mention it in comments, maybe we can figure out how to sew something that will help all of us feel our best in our clothes. There are a lot of women over 50 who are elegant and stylish, and it would be nice to maybe replicate some of their looks. I thought that would be one fun thing that we can all do together in 2025. So I'd love to hear your ideas about that. Now, there is one thing that's a quasi-goal. That is, this year, and this is not just for me, it's for some of you too. Let's wear the good stuff. We spend so much time sewing beautiful garments, and I know most of us tend to sew dressier things. And they hang in the closet, or they sit in a drawer. And there's no reason for us to not wear these beautiful things that we've spent time and oodles of money often creating. There's nothing wrong with being a little bit overdressed. Many of you are like me, and you sew a lot of t-shirts, or you make a lot of wearable toiles or muslins, and that's what you wear. And the good stuff just hangs there. So let's all of us vow to wear what's in our closet. Of course, if we wear it, maybe it'll get a little bit worn out, and then we'll have a reason to sew something new. If you're not yet a subscriber, I hope you'll consider subscribing and hit the bell so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video, which will probably be every couple of weeks in 2025. Happy New Year. I hope to see you again soon. Take care.